right. So for our first panel, Partnership for Responsible Addressable Media, otherwise known as PRAM, I would like to introduce our panel moderator, Lotame's own Lana Warner, Senior Manager of Client Strategy and Engagement, who manages our enterprise clients on the buy side. Mike Signorelli, partner in Venable's e-commerce, privacy, and cybersecurity group, where he focuses on advising and representing clients on issues related to data privacy and security. Jordan Mitchell, Senior Vice President of Identity, Data, and Privacy Initiatives, IAB Tech Lab, a global member community developing foundational technology and standards for growth and trust in the digital media ecosystem. And last but not least, Bill Tucker, Group Executive Vice President at the ANA, where he has executive responsibility for building and overseeing the ANA data, technology, and measurement business systems and B2B systems. Bill is also Executive Director of Partnership for Responsible Addressable Media. Before I turn it over to Lana, we're going to have our panelist, Mike, one of the key leaders in the PRAM policy group, help set the stage with a quick overview of the PRAM goals and working groups. Morning, Mike. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, and congratulations on this great conference. I was looking at the agenda. It looks really exciting for the day. So appreciate being part of it, and thank you for providing some time to Bill, Jordan, and I talk about an important industry effort that we're involved in. It really demonstrates Lotame's thought leadership in this space as we're looking to talk about and identify something that's vitally important to the health of the digital ecosystem, and that's really identifying an interoperable identifier-based solution to support addressable media. So let me unpack all those big buzzwords and talk about exactly what we're trying to do here as an industry. In August of this year, the Partnership for Responsible Addressable Media was launched. It's under the leadership of the leading advertising and marketing trade associations. That's the ANA, IAB, 4As, NAI, WFA, and the Tech Lab, and some of the biggest marketers, agencies, data, and tech companies. Just to name a few, we have Ford, P&G, Unilever, Publicis, NBC Universal, Adobe, The Trade Desk, and many others that have come together to advance and protect the critical functionalities that so many of us rely on in this space around customization, measurement, attribution that support the digital media and advertising ecosystem, all while we're working to ensure that we include appropriate safeguards around privacy and improving the consumer experience, ensure that addressable media is still the fuel, the driver for the digital economy. And part of what we were doing here is responding to some impending technological changes with the likely deprecation of third-party cookies, changes to mobile identifiers, ensuring that we have still a stable identifier that's interoperable, accessible to the marketplace on equal terms, to ensure that we can continue to engage in the vital business operations that so many of our businesses rely on, but also that consumers expect, that help ensure that they have a valuable digital experience and have access to subsidized content and services and can see relevant advertising and do product discovery, all those valuable marketing use cases that so many of us expect and enjoy from our digital experience. And to help organize this effort, and we'll hear more from some of the leaders involved in this, particularly Bill from ANA representing the marketers who's spearheading and leading the entire effort. Jordan with the Tech Lab is helping with the technical standards, and I'm representing the policy side of things through the Digital Advertising Alliance. But together we have brought the business community together into a single effort with 4 working groups. The first is the Business Practices Working Group. And this group has come together to identify those vital operations that so many of us need and expect from some sort of reliable identifier. And that's personalization, customization, frequency capping, attribution, measurement. That group's helping identify those. Then we have our Technical Standards Working Group, which is being housed by the Tech Lab, who's going to be helping develop a standard interoperable solution or solution sets. We're still working through how many solutions will be needed, but the idea is to ensure that there's competition and access. And so we're grateful to have Tech Lab's expertise in that space. I'm working with the Privacy Policy and Legal Considerations Working Group. So we're looking at what are the appropriate standards, the privacy standards, security standards that go around with some interoperable identifier. And then finally, we have a working group around communications and education. How are we talking about this in industry to consumers, to policymakers, regulators, explaining why it's vital, the need for this sort of interoperable, addressable media identifier. And finally, just to give you some highlights, when we made the announcement in August, we identified some foundational principles to make sure that these core understandings are part of whatever is developed by industry. And at the heart of that is consumer privacy. Also, the goal is to make sure that there's continued access to diverse and competitive content offerings, that whatever is developed, it supports business operations. I've already named a few, but wanting to make sure that marketers still have what they need to engage in reaching consumers. The solutions must be standardized and interoperable. Everyone should have equal access, and that it should be respected by browsers, operating systems, to make sure there's not interference with this development and ongoing addressable media. And then finally, the use of it should be subject to some standards, compliance with law. So that was a lot. I'll turn it now to my colleagues and jump in a little bit more detail.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. That was super informative. And I think lots of people have questions, but I'm going to start with one that I'm super interested in for across our panel. When you guys are talking about creating kind of an even playing field for the industry, when we're talking to consumers, we hear all the time about ensuring connectivity, solving for identity. These are key topics we hear daily from publishers, agencies, and marketers. So what is the Partnership for Responsible and Addressable Media's role in helping develop an industry-wide solution? In particular, I'd love to hear kind of the viewpoint on policy, the viewpoint on technology, as well as the viewpoint from the marketer point of view.
So I'm happy to jump in, but Bill, you see it from the sort of top of the structure. If you want to maybe tie some of the pieces together, and then Jordan and I could jump in.
Yeah, I can talk kind of the structure, and then I can go a little bit into the kind of the marketer's view, if that makes sense. So we've imagined the issues that that Mike outlined that are right in front of us are to resolve some disruptive changes that are right in front of us as far as identifiers and addressable advertising. So the road to that is through first fully having the marketer and the publisher community define the use cases that identifiers are applied for, in a real robust way, right, to get that level set. That then informs kind of legal and policy thinking around what needs to be true, what principles need to be true for those use cases to be satisfied in an identity solution, and then that feeds the technical solution, the standards that need to be developed, informed by those principles in support of those business use cases, and then the marketplace builds the tech and the solution. It's very sequential, but there's overlapping and connectivity among the different groups. The education and communication group is really our lagging group, because we're out there in the public space introduced with our mission, our vision, and the work we're doing. But right now we're doing the work. So as we begin to build use cases, and by the way, Tech Lab has done some excellent early work, which is also contributing to kind of the type of education and socialization assets that we'll be putting out. But that's really for next quarter. The business use case space is all about in big buckets. One big bucket, obviously, is let's call it the selling, the advertising, the audience building, the targeting, that whole space. Another big bucket is the understanding space. Understanding is the measurement, the validation, and all of the use cases that fall under that, from cross-media measurement to analytics, et cetera. And so it's a foundational work to unpack all that. And that's why our marketers are deeply involved. We've 30 corporate executives participating in the business use case work with others, with publishers and ad tech peers. But it's got a strong voice of the marketer across media, analytics, data science, and measurement. I think kind of the next parallel path right now is in policy. That's kind of happening now. It's beginning to get framed up. Mike can talk to that. And then Jordan, of course, has got a community of technologists and engineers who are ready at the ready to go, and start to drive standards. So I mean, it's kind of over to Mike on this one, I think, from use cases to policy.
And we're going to build from the work product that comes out of the business working group, and it's part of the thinking and the policy framework. And what we're trying to do in the policy working group is identify what are the appropriate standards and safeguards that would go along with accessing and using any sort of interoperable identifier. We're calling it right now an addressable media identifier, just as a concept, and ensuring that its uses are used for its intended purposes, like advertising, frequency capping, measurement, market research, whatever those permitted uses would be aligned with the use of the identifier. But the core principle behind that is that it has to be interoperable. It needs to work across different channels, platforms, in-browser operating systems, and there has to be equal access. And provided that it works in those ways, then there should not be interference. So if you use the identifier in a responsible way, you should be able to use it for its intended purposes. And that's what we're working through. We've had a series of meetings with industry working through the document. We're probably on our 7th meeting now in the last probably month and a half, and we're steaming ahead with a goal to have something set by the end of the year on the policy side, which then would feed into Jordan's important work about developing the standards.
I think all of this process really helps build consensus and alignment across the entire industry. Make sure everyone knows just how important identifiers and addressability is. I think most folks in our industry see the outcomes, but they don't realize, as Lotame does, of course, given your position in the market, that all of the systems and the technology supporting our ecosystem have as a dependency identifiers built into the software. So the software that runs our industry, real-time bidding to direct frequency capping, measurement attribution, all rely on some identifiers to serve all the addressability use cases. Even our privacy compliance, in many cases, relies on identifiers to hold consumers' preferences. And so we have a lot of rethinking and re-architecting to do with those software systems, and technology systems really are best accomplished when they're done with the right business and policy input. So we've been getting a lot with a broad swath of organizations, and that's what's most important about the Partnership for Responsible Addressable Media, is bringing together so many of the constituencies, getting the alignment on, okay, how deep does this go? How do we form the policies around this? What business cases do we need to solve for on a stack rank basis? Then here are the technology standards that are going to serve those use cases and work within that policy.
As you guys develop that framework, how important is privacy? Mike, from a policy standpoint, even Jordan from a technology standpoint, where does privacy lie in all of this and respecting the consumer's preference?
It's foundational, and it's the reason why it was number one in the list of goals and missions for PRAM. And I think Jordan used an important term. He said alignment. This is a massive undertaking, and borrow some of what Bill said. It's foundational to the way the ecosystem works, and to bring the business community together in this way, it's just tremendous. And making sure that we truly are aligned, because there are so many facets to this. There is this consumer experience, which tied into that is privacy. and have to make sure that those standards attached to the technology, that they're respected when we're talking about business use cases. So throughout all of our conversations and all of our working groups, we are thinking about the consumer experience and the privacy implications of the activities that we're engaged in. And you'll likely see as this develops and moves further along that there will be real concrete standards and different approaches to how we've been as an industry thinking about responsible data practices and how do we make sure that we move the conversation forward. This is really an opportunity to reimagine the way that our industry operates and make it better for marketers and also for consumers, and tie that all together, data practices and privacy.
All right. So if I could jump in, I think to privacy is important. This is a global initiative, right? So we're comprehending all the policies and laws around the world. Ultimately, it's got to work. It's got to work everywhere, not just the United States, and that's all getting kind of figured out in the policy group, but as well as in the tech group, and as well as with the marketers. I mean, we've got global marketers participating.
And I would add that to Bill's point, the releases that the large browser OS platforms are making are global releases. So when they remove a third-party cookie, or when they make changes to a mobile advertising ID, they make those changes globally, and many would look at those changes and see that they are eliminating the need to trust anyone in our ecosystem. So really leaning in on a consumer and having the consumer at the center and their privacy protection at the center is critical to both match the narrative of the large browser OS platforms, as well as earn the trust and back from those who don't feel that they can trust our ecosystem right now.
You guys talk about alignment and creating a standard, but are we all on the same page when you're talking to agencies and marketers and publishers and even walled gardens? So, are we in the same book, maybe different novels?
So look, I mean, first of all, what I think got PRAM recognized quickly as the Partnership for Responsible Addressable Media. Apologies for the acronym. Excellent launch was the fact that we actually had all the stakeholders. We had the agencies, the publishers, the marketers, right? The ad tech companies, the data, leading data companies. So it's that view that gives us really the absolute confidence and belief that we're going to be able to move the initiative as it needs to. And I think it's important even to think about walled gardens. And we have platforms, participating in the use case work, because they're a part of that. We have a belief that measurement is an example of a use case. We're seeing it, right? The walls are breaking down a bit, right? With companies like Google and Facebook willing to work together on cross-media measurement. It's happening, right? As a use case, right? So where there's common goals and common objectives, we're gonna get everyone together. So I don't see this one as having really big issues. I think the other point that Mike talked about in the space of interoperability and without interference, that's important. So without interference means that the work we do has to be liaison appropriately with the browsers and the platforms, et cetera. So that's part of our thinking. We're an engagement solution organization, and so far so good. Everyone's on mission.
And we're doing the work. I mean, you get the people together. You get all the issues out on the table, you get the alignment out on the table, and that's really key. You get the leaders, both the business leaders, the policy leaders, the technical leaders, you get them around the table, and it's not something you can do in an hour meeting, right? There are a lot of critical stakeholders and perspectives that need to be heard, but they come together and you put the time in, and it's working. We are getting to that alignment and where everyone's coming together around a common cause.
So with 5 minutes left, the typical, where do you see yourself in the future? Where do you see the partnership, next year, 2021, when we're thinking of IDFA, when we're thinking of the cookieless challenge, when we're thinking of global changing privacy regulations? And then where do you see the partnership maybe 5 years down the road?
Well, I mean, I'll go first. I think we have aggressive timetables, right, for replacing the cookie and for having a proper solution inside iOS. And we have a definitive roadmap of deliverables to our governing group on that, to be transitioning on cookie, early, late first quarter, early next first, maybe by April, right? We have to have at the latest kind of standards out and beginning to kind of go through that transition. Longer term, look, addressable media is going to continue to explode. The linear television world is being rebuilt for addressability. All the major networks are going there. So we're going to have problems and challenges and opportunities to work on. The mission and the vision of the partnership is to ensure addressable media for consumers and brands.
Yeah, I think we need TechLab is already working on drafting some of the technical standards that we know we need, that our marketplace is telling us that we're going to need, and then there are more that we need to pull in as we continue our work within these partnership working groups. But the goal is we'll have some drafts out by the end of the year, but in Q1 get these standards pretty firmed up, and even to the point where engineering teams can start to write code and make some deployments. We need deployments within Q2 of 2021. Changes are coming. These things are happening, and so we need the systems that power our ecosystem to start rewriting some of that code, implementing some of these changes in how we do things a little differently, preserving our addressability use cases while preserving consumer privacy at the same time.
So I think I accidentally dropped an emoji into the chat just now, and it wasn't a commentary on what anyone was saying, just moving things off of my screen. That's it. So hopefully within a year, I'm much better at Zoom than I am right now. But where I see things, a year from now is hopefully we continue to have a vibrant, competitive marketplace that's supported by an interoperable identifier that's stable. And I think that is the ultimate goal. We want to make sure that we can continue to have true competition and consumers have a wonderful experience online, and marketers can communicate with those consumers online. And that's what we're trying to do, is to bring together the ecosystem. So hopefully a year from now, we're moving on to another issue. This has been solved.
Thank you so much, Mike, Jordan, Bill. Thank you for your time. And thank you to everyone around the world. Good morning, good night, good afternoon. And I'll pass it on back to Alex.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.